December 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Private Hans Weber was 21 years old. He'd been in the Wehrmacht since 1943. He'd fought in Russia, retreated from France. Now he was part of Germany's last desperate offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. Every morning Hans received his daily ration. It was the same every day. No variation, no surprises. The Wehrmacht daily ration, 1944. 700 grams of bread, usually black bread, often stale. 120 grams of meat, when available, usually wasn't. 25 grams of butter or margarine. Coffee substitute, made from roasted barley, no actual coffee. 6 cigarettes. That was it. Total calories, approximately 1,800 per day. Not enough for soldiers in active combat, not enough to maintain body weight, not enough to sustain energy for long marches or sustained fighting. But the most important item, the one item that arrived consistently, was the cigarettes. 6 cigarettes, every day, without fail. Why cigarettes? Because by 1944, the Wehrmacht understood something crucial. Soldiers needed morale more than they needed full stomachs. Cigarettes provided psychological comfort, stress relief, something to look forward to, a brief escape from the horror of war. Hans treasured those 6 cigarettes. He didn't smoke them all at once. He rationed them carefully. 1 after waking up, 1 after the midday meal, if there was one, 1 in the evening, 3 saved for emergencies or traded for extra food. Cigarettes were currency. You could trade them for almost anything. Extra bread, a warm place to sleep, information, favors from other soldiers. Hans once traded 4 cigarettes for a pair of dry socks. It was worth it. Trench foot killed more soldiers than combat in some units. The cigarettes weren't luxuries. They were survival tools, psychological and practical. But they were also a reminder of how little Germany had left to give its soldiers. No chocolate, no candy, no coffee, no variety, just 6 cigarettes, and hope that was enough. That same week, December 1944, Private James Mitchell was also in the Ardennes forest. American forces were being surrounded by the German offensive. Supplies were running low. The situation was desperate, but James still received his daily rations, and those rations were unlike anything Hans could imagine. American K-Ration, 1 day's supply, breakfast unit, canned meat, ham and eggs, 4 crackers, compressed cereal bar, instant coffee, real coffee, sugar tablets, 4 cigarettes, chewing gum, water purification tablets. Lunch unit, canned cheese or meat spread, 4 crackers, candy bar, usually Hershey's chocolate, sugar tablets, powdered lemon drink, 4 cigarettes, chewing gum. Dinner unit, canned meat, beef stew, pork loaf or chicken, 4 crackers, chocolate bar or fruit bar, instant coffee, sugar tablets, 4 cigarettes, toilet paper, cigarettes. Total calories, approximately 3,000 per day, enough to maintain weight and strength during combat. More importantly, variety, real coffee, chocolate, candy, chewing gum, things that made soldiers feel human. American soldiers complained constantly about K-Rations. They said the cheese spread tasted like cardboard, the crackers were too hard, the coffee was too weak, the meat was unidentifiable. They had no idea how lucky they were. James ate his breakfast K-Ration on December 20th, 1944. Ham and eggs from a can, not delicious, but hot after heating over a small fire. Crackers with the cheese spread, coffee, real coffee, not burnt barley substitute, and a piece of chocolate. He saved the chocolate for after the meal, let it melt slowly in his mouth, closed his eyes for just a moment, remembered home, remembered his mother's chocolate chip cookies, remembered normal life before the war. Then he opened his eyes, back to reality, back to the Ardennes, back to fighting. But that moment with the chocolate, that brief escape, mattered. It reminded him that normal life still existed, that this war would end, that there was something worth fighting for beyond just survival. The cigarettes were there too, 12 cigarettes per day, 4 in each K-Ration unit. But they were supplemental, nice to have, not essential like they were for Wehrmacht soldiers. American soldiers could trade cigarettes too, but they usually traded them for different things than Germans did. Germans traded cigarettes for food. Americans traded cigarettes for souvenirs, captured German daggers, helmets, flags. The difference revealed everything about the two armies' situations. By December 1944, the material gap between German and American forces was impossible to ignore. German soldier daily supplies, 1,800 calories of food, 6 cigarettes, maybe clean water, often had to find their own, no soap, hadn't seen soap in weeks. No toilet paper, no candy or chocolate, no coffee, only substitutes. American soldier daily supplies, 3,000 calories of food, 12 cigarettes, water purification tablets, safe water always, soap, included in personal hygiene kits, toilet paper, included in every dinner, K-Ration, chocolate or candy, every meal, real coffee, breakfast and dinner. But the gap went deeper than just rations. American soldiers received mail regularly, letters from home, packages with cookies, candy, magazines. Christmas 1944, even soldiers on the front lines received mail. The army had prioritized getting holiday packages to troops, even in combat zones. German soldiers received mail sporadically. The postal system was breaking down. Roads were bombed, railways destroyed. Some soldiers hadn't received mail in months. They had no idea if their families were alive or dead. American soldiers got regular rest rotations. A unit would fight for a week, then rotate back for rest. Hot showers, clean uniforms, cooked meals, movies, entertainment. German soldiers fought until they couldn't fight anymore. No rotations, no rest. Just constant combat until they were wounded, killed, or captured. American soldiers who wore out their boots got new ones. The supply system ensured regular equipment replacement. German soldiers wrapped rags around their feet because replacement boots didn't exist. The morale impact was devastating. Hans Weber wrote a letter home. It was never delivered, found after his capture. "We fight with courage. We fight with determination, but we fight with empty stomachs and worn boots and 6 cigarettes a day. The Americans fight with full bellies and endless supplies and chocolate in every meal. How can we win? Courage is not enough when the enemy has everything and we have nothing." A German officer, Major Friedrich Schmidt, wrote in his diary, "My men are brave. They follow orders. They die heroically, but I watch them slowly waste away. Not from combat, from hunger, from exposure, from the knowledge that every day the Americans across from us eat better than German civilians eat at home. You cannot maintain morale when the enemy's discarded rations are better than your best meals." January 1945. The Battle of the Bulge was ending. German forces were in full retreat. Hans Weber was captured by American forces on January 10th. He'd been without food for 3 days. When American soldiers searched him, they found the Wehrmacht supply system had completely collapsed. His unit was surrounded. Surrender was the only option. Empty canteen, 3 cigarette butts, saved for later, a piece of black bread, moldy, a photograph of his family, nothing else. The American soldiers gave him water, a chocolate bar, cigarettes. Hans started crying, not from shame at being captured, from the realization that American guards were feeding him better than the Wehrmacht had. Hans was taken to a POW processing center. He was interviewed by American intelligence officers. They wanted to know about German positions, strength, morale. But they also asked about living conditions. What did German soldiers eat? What supplies did they receive? Hans told them 6 cigarettes per day, maybe bread, sometimes meat, water if we could find it. That's all. The American interrogator, a lieutenant, didn't believe him at first. "You're telling me the Wehrmacht only provided 6 cigarettes and basic rations, no chocolate, no coffee, no variety?" Correct, Hans said. What we captured from you was better than what our own supply gave us. When we overran American positions in the first days of the offensive, we found your rations. K-Rations, C-Rations. We thought it was special supplies for officers. Then we realized this is what every American soldier gets, every day. The lieutenant made notes, then asked, "Did finding our supplies affect your morale?" Hans laughed bitterly. "Yes, we realized we were fighting an enemy that feeds its soldiers chocolate while we got 6 cigarettes. How do you maintain fighting spirit knowing that?" Hans was sent to a POW camp in France. The camp conditions were better than his Wehrmacht service. 3 meals daily, real coffee, occasional chocolate, medical care, clean water. German POWs gained weight in American camps. On average, 15–20 pounds during their captivity. They were eating better as prisoners than they'd eaten as soldiers. This created cognitive dissonance. They were defeated, captured, imprisoned. But they were healthier and better fed than when they were free. One POW, speaking candidly to a chaplain, said, "We were told Americans were weak, soft, decadent, because they had chocolate and we had discipline. But discipline doesn't win wars. Chocolate-eating Americans beat cigarette-ration Germans. Maybe decadence is just another word for having enough." After the war, military historians studied the morale impact of rations. The findings were clear. Well-fed soldiers fight better than hungry soldiers. This seems obvious, but it was quantifiable. American units maintained combat effectiveness longer than German units of equivalent size. Not because American soldiers were braver or better trained, because they were better fed. Studies showed well-fed soldiers made better decisions under stress. Adequate nutrition reduced psychological trauma. Regular rations, including luxury items like chocolate, maintained morale during extended combat. Knowing you'll be fed tomorrow reduces anxiety today. The Wehrmacht's 6 cigarettes per day policy was actually well-intentioned. German command understood morale mattered. Cigarettes were the most efficient morale booster they could provide, given limited resources. But it wasn't enough. You can't sustain an army on cigarettes and willpower. The American approach, seemingly wasteful with chocolate in every ration, proved more effective. The waste was actually investment. Chocolate cost pennies, but it provided morale value worth far more. Post-war, American military ration design continued this philosophy. Modern MREs, meals ready to eat, include main course, various options, side dish, dessert, often chocolate or candy, snacks, beverages, coffee, sports drinks, condiments, utensils, accessory pack, gum, matches, toilet paper. Total calories, 1,200 per meal, 3,600 per day, plus variety, plus comfort items. The lesson from World War II was learned. Soldiers are not machines. They need physical sustenance and psychological comfort. Providing both isn't waste, it's strategy. Hans Weber survived the war, returned to Germany in 1947, became a baker. He said the irony wasn't lost on him, spending his life making bread after spending his war years starving for it. In a 1985 interview, Hans was asked, "What did you think about when you were hungry?" He said, "American chocolate. I'd been captured. I'd eaten American K-Rations in the POW camp, and all I could think was we lost to an army that had chocolate in every meal. Not because they were better warriors, because they were better supplied." I learned something important. Wars aren't won by soldiers willing to die for their country. Wars are won by countries willing to feed their soldiers. The interviewer asked, "Do you resent America for having more?" Hans shook his head. "No, I resent German command for having less and sending us to fight anyway. America fed its soldiers. That's what responsible nations do. Germany gave us 6 cigarettes and expected miracles. That's not strategy. That's cruelty." Today, the contrast between Wehrmacht cigarettes and American chocolate represents something larger. the difference between societies that value their citizens and societies that expend them. Germany in 1944 was a collapsing regime that had squandered its resources on a war it couldn't win. By the end, it had nothing left to give its soldiers except cigarettes and orders. America in 1944 was at the peak of its industrial power. It had resources to spare, and it chose to spend those resources keeping soldiers fed, supplied, and combat effective. One approach couldn't sustain an army, the other could. Wehrmacht soldiers got 6 cigarettes daily. Americans had chocolate in every K-Ration. That's not just a story about food. It's a story about priorities, about resources, about what nations owe their soldiers, and it's a story about why one side won and the other lost. Not because of courage, both sides had brave soldiers. Not because of tactics, both sides had skilled commanders. But because one side fed its soldiers chocolate while the other gave them cigarettes and empty promises. In war, logistics beats bravery, supply beats strategy, and chocolate beats cigarettes every single time.